Hey everybody, welcome back to Engaging the Phenomenon. This is like our second episode back since my hiatus. I'm really glad to be back. I appreciate all the feedback from everybody. But today we have a great guest, up and comer, Sam Tupacabra. Welcome, buddy.
Thanks, Shane. Good to be here, man. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people, at least on the UFO Twitter side, are gonna be familiar with a lot of your stuff that circulates like wildfire. Now, a lot of the short clip videos you do, but just to get started, really, your name is Sam, handle Tupacabra. So where's that from?
I literally just made it up. Like 10 years ago, I was goofing around. I was hanging out with a friend, and I just drew it on a napkin, and I thought it was really funny. And on my website, you can see the original drawing. And it's just, I just thought it was super funny. And then I kept the drawing for a minute. And then when I started to engage with UFO Twitter, I realized that would be a really cool handle to do it in. And by that time, I had also kind of refined the art to a degree that I thought was pretty cool. And so then I had a cool profile picture. And then, so I just went with that. And I've had a lot of success with it. It really, I think it disarms some people. And it's kind of cool, especially when followed up with a little bit of the art too. I think it really matches.
Yeah, I think it looks really cool. So you're a filmmaker and ufologist from the Pacific Northwest, right? I got that right.
That's right. Yeah.
And so how'd you get into ufology?
Lifelong passion. Lifelong passion. I've been really, I would say, intensely into the field since I was a little kid. I had an experience as a kid. It was more on a paranormal level, but it was profound, and it happened when I was young. And so it just caused this interest, right? And so that same year, basically I saw like a apparition or something in my room when I woke up. And it was definitely not someone just kind of walking through the room, or, whoever was there, whatever was happening, it was happening to me, for me. And it scared the crap out of me. I must have been, I don't know, 5 or 6 or whatever. So then that same year, or closely thereafter, a classmate of mine was on the show called Sightings. And I was a kid. This is right when the Fox network came out. So we had all these cool shows. And then I couldn't believe that I was seeing my classmate on a TV show. It blew my mind. And she ended up talking about the same thing. So in her world, the same thing was happening. And she drew pictures of them. They were featured on the show. And then so I think I became obsessed with that show, probably thinking I would see more of my classmates on there or whatever. But it just kind of continued. So, it's paranormal studies. So everything from aliens to Bigfoot to ghosts and stuff, I was always fascinated about, because it just spoke more to what I had experienced in my own life. So I always stayed up on it, and I loved it. I'm that friend. I'm sure we all are that friend who talks their buddies' ears off about, UFOs or whatever, coming up with theories, long walks home. And they just got oh, here we go again. Let's not talk about the pyramids. But I did it. And it was just a lifelong obsession of mine. And it continues to this day. And I'm kind of fueled by the answers that you could find by independent research. And so as much as I love getting fed information and disclosure and all this stuff, it's been rewarding just to be able to go out and get your feelers out there and use your own kind of skills and discernment to see what you can find.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually had a similar experience to what you're describing.
Really?
Yeah. And, that's kind of where it started for me too. But, afterwards, have you ever had any kind of UFO sightings or anything after that, or not really?
No, the most profound experience I had, other than seeing that ghost, is something that, or apparition, I don't know what it was, right?
Right, whatever it was.
Shortly after, in terms of years, maybe 2-3 years later, I walked into the living room of my house, and my mom was watching some show, and it had a POV of probably a person on a bed looking up at gray aliens, right? And the sight was so jarring to me, I almost fainted. And it's the only time in my life it's ever happened. My knees gave out. I had a flight or fight response, and I had to army crawl out of the room, and I had to block my vision so I didn't see the screen anymore. it was the single most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. And that always stuck with me. It became hard to kind of like either, you know, it was like, if you have a fear of spiders, you got to let the spider crawl on you before, you know, you're like, oh, okay, I got this. And then so it was like that. It was this visceral response. You know, like I liken it to the fear I've seen some people have over spiders or snakes, where it's, you know, you could be as big as you want, but if you see the thing you're afraid of, you scream, you'll drop whatever you're doing and you'll try to run out of it. So that's the response I had to that. So like, other than that, no aliens, no craft, nothing really like that at all.
So you've had a lifelong interest. So, you know, that's kind of a long time. But,
Yeah.
you know, you've been more, I mean, I only came across you more recently when you started putting out these short videos and posting them. You know, how'd you get involved in like the public space or the public discourse on UFOs?
Oh, so good question. I am a videographer, video director, editor. It's been my real like work and passion for the last 10, 12 years. I came from film school and just went right into it. I started doing music videos and just that was how I made my money. And it felt great to be able to kind of grind that way and work my way up. And since I started, I realized I was a person who kind of saw the playing field and then wanted to engage on like a level that was more interesting than just day by day. So with the hip hop scene in Portland, I realized I had to kind of like, you know, amplify it in order to get the video work kind of up there, and it worked. You know, like it crescendoed into like, you know, artists kind of being signed, you know, from my city based on their music videos, because the music video aesthetic was able to raise it enough. You know, it became easy and possible to get that technology in your hands, really make those things. And so like I've had success in that field, and it's the way I produce art now. So drawing all the stuff that I do, like that's something I do as an exercise, because I've been drawing since I was a kid. But like if I had to say what kind of artist am I would say I'm a videographer now, because I've been doing it for so long, and it's how I think. So when it came down to engaging with UFO, Twitter, or ufology in general, you know, again, I looked at the playing field and I saw that there was just coincidentally, right, not a lot of great videos coming out that were balanced or that were professionally made, or that gave you a feeling. A lot of videos came out and gave you information, but not a lot was giving you feelings, or like using cinematics in a way that I thought was pretty cool. So that's kind of where it was, and I realized I have this skill. There's this whole let's fill that gap. And so I took the time to do it, and I just really started to craft these videos in a way that like I thought would speak to me and get my attention. And of course, sorry. Okay, so I really wanted to get that kind of spotlight on the field, and I thought that videography would be the way to do it. And since that's my skill, I said there must be more than a coincidence here. There must be more than just chance that I'm here. I'm willing to do it. There's not a lot of that stuff out, and so I just went full bore with it and didn't look back. And that's when I started like the YouTube channel and the TikTok channel, and then just kind of getting videos out. When I first started, I didn't have that stuff. I think I was just putting videos out on my Twitter account, and they were getting like 20 views or something, right? But no, I wasn't discouraged. I was like, okay, cool, because it was getting support, and then it just kind of fed from there. And the encouragement I got from the community is kind of like, it's something I've never seen before. I've never experienced it before. I'm always the odd guy out talking about this stuff, but then to be like somewhat in the inner circle of people who are thinking about this and discussing this and engaging with scientists and stuff, like I was just blown away. Like I just really think that I'm following somewhat of a calling or somewhat of a path that was kind of laid out, based on my history and where I want to go. So in that term, in that sense, I guess that's what I'm doing, is kind of just making videos because I can, because no one else is doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, your videos are fantastic. And again, I know exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about that feeling, because I get the crazy vibes watching a Tupacabra production video,
Thank
man.
you.
you know,
Thank you.
for sure. So, you know, one of the videos that you made is called Shadows of the Invisible Sun. That's kind of like a 30-minute, you know, I don't know if you call that a full length or, you know, I don't know what you consider that, but you know, it's about 30 minutes and it's almost like a documentary, and it's awesome. So can you talk about that a little? Just the, like, you know, how you decided to put that together the way that you did?
Yeah. This is kind of a wild story. I was watching UFO Garage, and they had Lou Elizondo on the show, and so like great guys. I love Lou, and Lou started to talk about the soul, and he did like the triangle with the square and the circle, and it just like, I don't know. You know, I think I was kind of compiling clips already on like consciousness a little bit. But when I saw that, I just thought like, you know, there's something to it. And I just decided to like really put it in line. And when I did, I thought it was going to be something like a 10-minute video on like, you know, maybe some loose connections that people were talking. You know, some people are talking about the soul, or some people are talking about this unseen world. But then when I started to really dive in, I'd watch a clip and it would strike me, holy crap, I've seen something like this 10 years ago. Then I'd go back and watch that, oh, wow, they say the same thing. And then I just kept doing it. I was like, well, that's fun. You know, this is a fun kind of puzzle. And then I just kept doing it. And I remember I was telling, you know, people like peers of mine, like, hey, this might be the longest video I ever make. It might be 10 minutes. It might be 12 minutes. And then when it was over, it was 30. And I just was like, well, okay, longest video I ever made, and wasn't even done. I just knew that I couldn't like not release it. But yeah, like wanting to get a better understanding of what Jacques Vallée was talking about. When I see him talk and he's like, oh, I would be disappointed if it was just aliens. Like, what do you mean? Because I'd be pumped, you know what I mean? So I was like, what's he talking about? And then obviously, like, you know, personal, like, you know, people of mine I hold like kind of dear to the topic, and also people I use as kind of compasses to guide myself through it. They put science first and stuff, like Gary Nolan, right? Kit Green, even Diana Pasulka, right? Like these people are laying breadcrumbs out for us. You know, Lou Elizondo's in there, Sean Cahill, like they're laying these breadcrumbs out for us to kind of follow. And I felt like while I was making it, I felt like I was learning something, because I was able to understand fully what they were talking about to a higher degree, because I wasn't just watching it and then sharing the clip or tweeting about it or whatever. I was ingesting it, and I was integrating it within my network of what I already know. And it became something that I felt I knew more intimately, that I could really, like, I feel like I could talk to Vallée a little bit myself about what this idea is. I'm nowhere, you know what I mean? Only because I grasped the concept a little bit better than I did before. And then, so that's what I did. And then I'll be honest, like, you know, I've been making videos and stuff for so long. I came up with my own process of how to edit without, how to edit with minimum personal need to change something. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like flow of consciousness style. You know, my hands on the keyboard and the mouse. I've edited so many videos; it's second nature to me. So it's one of those things I can do with in the flow state or whatever. And so I find that when I'm not necessarily forcing it or trying to get something to work, when I'm just kind of watching and learning and grabbing and kind of going, you know, like I'll go furious for a night. I won't remember what I did. Wake up in the next morning, watch it, like, whoa, that was lame, or whoa, that was good. And that happened a few times during this process. And I remember I'll even watch the video today and I'll come out with like some interesting things that I didn't really know I was putting in there that kind of just worked. So I think it kind of built itself once the seed was planted. And then it took everything I knew, everything I had to kind of get it out there and lay it out so that people could really kind of see it and feel it. And I can't, like, once I showed it around, I just couldn't believe the responses. So I'm still taken aback that people can pull something out of it. But yeah, that's kind of the inception. I just wanted to learn more about what they were talking about. And in the process, I taught myself a lot, and I thought that I could share that information. It was worthy enough to share.
Yeah, and there's a lot of heavy concepts in there. They had that Bentoff guy who I've actually never seen a video of him before.
Really?
Yeah, and that I can recall, and he's talking like the evolution and the higher self and fascinating.
Do you
And
find that like not to cut you off, but like, is it interesting how some of these key figures of modern ufology and technology and stuff are actually like mirroring a little bit of what he said?
I can't think, it was surreal. He's talking about all the schizophrenia, and it's funny that they came up in some of the studies that Dr. Gary Nolan was doing.
Almost the same language.
Yeah.
Almost the same language, James. That's what's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, I kind of felt like a Slumdog Millionaire when he has all these answers. I'm like, well, how'd you get those? And like, there's a story behind it all. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, where are these answers coming from? If you can source the story, it's interesting how like, I hear Gary Nolan talk or really, Jim Semivan too, right? And they're
Yeah.
referencing. I'm like, oh, I know what the Akashic records are, but none of my friends do.
Yeah.
Like I know what remote viewing is. Not a lot of people do. So how come I know all this stuff? Like it's just interesting how your interest will kind of guide you through some of that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. I like that you included that quote by Diana Pasulka that actually, I believe Ryan Bledsoe mentioned it on his podcast. That was a really good one.
Yeah. There's like wait, which quote?
The one where it's like the sincerity is like
Oh, in the opening. Yes.
Yeah.
I heard her say that at the Rice conference, right? And it just was really, kind of guiding this idea that like we might have a wrong map or order of operation for the physical world versus thoughts and stuff. Like we think it goes in a certain way. And it's almost like that quote is a good reminder, like, your intention, right? And what you're thinking of and how you're thinking about it might have as much of an effect on your ability to manifest something into reality as your physical ability to do it. So like,
right.
it really puts, it put me in the right frame of mind, I guess, to kind of finish the project. And I thought it was a good opening quote for that, but yeah.
Yeah. No, there was this other quote too that it comes to mind. Yeah, I think this one was on the Ryan Bledsoe podcast, and he was saying that when he was speaking to her, that she said something like, actually, what intuition is it filters truth into your awareness. So that's like a similar thing, which I thought was a fascinating perspective, right?
No, it really is. It really is.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah, and you had some other really good short videos. Like it's pretty short, but I thought it was so profound. Was the Dorothy Izat video?
Oh yeah, not a lot of people talk about Dorothy Izat.
Oh man, and I think she's she's like such a prime example of an experiencer in the modern UFO culture, if we can call it that, or just modern day experiencer, where her story wasn't really tampered with. Thanks to, I guess, partially Dr. J. Allen Hynek's advice to her to just like stay away from the UFO community a little, not let people kind of impose their thoughts and ideas onto her story. But what's the background behind you creating that the short film on that?
Somehow or another, I think it was through like mutual friends. I was shown the Capturing the Light video.
Yeah.
And I recalled, because I was always on Unsolved Mysteries and all this other stuff as a kid, I recalled the story.
Yeah.
And so watching it now in this new light, it really stuck with me. And certain stories have stuck with me. And that's where my compass goes. So Dorothy Izat, Chris Bledsoe, these are stories that, like, to me are hit all these marks in my mind where I'm like, might be important. And so like, I really love talking about Dorothy Izat, but not a lot of people knew what it was about. And so I just created this TikTok account and I was putting out short form videos, and I just couldn't think of a better subject to cover for a quick little, did you know about this woman? And I have long-term goals in the field, but also as a videographer and as a filmmaker. Dorothy Isaac's one of those films that needs to get made. The documentary is great, but I'm always going to be pushing that to be in the mainstream circle, because if I don't make it, I want someone else to make it or get the chance to, because it's just one of those things where UFO stories, the one that got me really into it was Travis Walton. And I think I must have been in second grade when that came out. And that Fire in the Sky film.
Yeah.
It took me. I remember getting in trouble in class because it's, we were told to journal or something. And I would just draw these pictures from the trailer and like write out what the trailer, it was, when I look back on it, it's pretty bizarre. Talk to my parents about it. Pretty bizarre, but like I was obsessed with it. And then like to find out later on that his actual story differs from the movie in some key ways.
Yeah.
And some people might see that those key ways are irrelevant. Let's say the look of the ship on the inside. Okay, maybe that's irrelevant. I don't think so. The presence of human beings or humanoids in the experience, I think that's pretty relevant. The fact that there was this weird loss of space, that like felt like he was in a hangar that was on another situation. It was really in depth. So you walk away from that movie and you're like, wow, these aliens are coming down, grabbing people, covering them in brown goo, and then like dropping them off naked. Days later. Like, that's a bummer, dude. Like, I get it, but like, it doesn't make me feel like there could be a spiritual element or anything personal involved in this process at all. In fact, it just felt like it was super traumatic for Travis, and it was something he wished never happened. Well, now you look at Dorothy Isaac and you look at Chris Bledsoe and how other people have integrated these experiences in their lives, and you realize like, wow, there could be a spiritual aspect or a different aspect to these things. And if you study dreams and symbology, you know that like every one of those details matters. Whatever you walked away with matters. And to exclude those from a story, just because it doesn't fit the mainstream narrative that was kind of foretold to us by like, powers that be, it's like, okay, well, let's not avoid that anymore. Maybe now's the time to really dive into the conscious spiritual aspect of the phenomena. And Dorothy Isaac's just like a really good vehicle to do it, because she's very sincere. She didn't ever ask for any money. Her evidence is deep, profound, epic. The collection, it speaks for itself. What do they say? 30,000 feet of film. There are like a lot of other supporters she has too that are getting the word out there. So I just say, like, if I have a platform, if I have a way to create content that other people can't do, if I could bring attention to something, stories like Dorothy Isaac are the stories I think I want to tell.
Yeah, and I think, again, that's a fantastic short one that everybody should watch. And I'm looking forward to doing more kind of like videos like that, man. Because again, I think it kind of brings it back to life in a way. And again,
Absolutely.
there's people like you're saying that don't know about Dorothy Isaac, even within like the UFO community, and it's like a prime example case of like what people should be aware of, Another really cool video you did, obviously it's going to be controversial to a lot of people, is the hybrid theory video.
Yeah.
So
I love it because I don't necessarily believe in it, you know what I mean? But it's content that was out, and I just freaking like love John Ramirez. I don't know why. I think the guy's super chill. I like his presentation. I like how he delivers information. And I thought that his appearance on like some shows, he was getting some like pushback a little bit. I thought it was cool. He handled it well, and he sourced a lot of the stuff. So I was like watching a lot of different things, and it kind of, if I were to say, let's prove him right, I started to grab clips that would be kind of like, well, what's he talking about? Like, could this be real? Is John Ramirez off base? Or is there something that could be, held on to? This is a pretty solid theory, not the one I buy, but if you wanted to source it, you could. And so I did. And I just started to grab clips that one could argue, hey, maybe we're hybrids. Maybe there are hybrids out there. it's a common
Yeah.
thing that keeps popping up within abductions and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's not totally off base, but it is
Yeah. Yeah.
controversial.
It's highly controversial. And you said you don't subscribe to it, right?
I think I'd have to see a lot more. Like there's,
Right.
like there's certain parts of the phenomenon, parts of this lore, and parts of these experiences, I think, that are all consuming, and for me. And so like some stuff I have to kind of keep at arm's length so that I don't find myself, digging for reptilians and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's appropriate as a filmmaker, or let's say a content creator, to kind of get a roundabout idea of subjects and then kind of dive in later on if you wanted to dive in. So maybe as more information comes out, I'll be able to make more content and maybe make sense of it myself. But for now, it seems like it is a cool idea and one that we should always have our eyes on. But I can't personally say like that's happening for sure. I need to see more. Yeah,
for sure. And you included parts of the telefactoring in the Shadows of the Invisible Sun, and then you kind of did a solo video on that, which I thought was awesome. So what made you decide to do a solo video on the telefactoring, the decoding Nolan video?
I woke up and the thought struck me and I did it. And so I just was like, I think I understand this concept more than some people, because I invested time in it. I invested time in trying to think about it. And so maybe I didn't understand it better, but maybe I understood how to express it in a way that would get other people to understand, to kind of be on board. So I gave it a shot and I just tried to run it through. I realized, like kind of a roundabout how fast I wanted the video to be, but that I'm basically riffing off of someone I saw that made sense to me. And so I just, for the first time ever, recorded myself. I've never, ever done that in my life. I hope to do one again soon. I'm just doing so much stuff right now. It's like, but I do want to get in there and keep making more content, and finding different things to talk about. And that's why I made it, because I thought that I got it. And I just thought that if I could explain it under like 15 minutes, it might be doing a service to both Nolan and his fans and the conversation as a whole. And I think some people got something out of it. I don't know.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great way to kind of highlight this concept that is, that could be very important to, the phenomenon. So I thought it was a good job. And
thank you.
It was great to see you. It was great to see you, in a video. It's really cool. I think people can relate once they see you.
Yeah.
And I hope you do more of those, man.
Thank you, man.
But so a kind of theme in some of your videos and the documentaries and stuff, the short videos is kind of some of the consciousness stuff, right? Is something I realize, and again, sometimes in ufology there's camps or whatever, but you're definitely open to the ideas of consciousness. So what's your take on that personally? Like the consciousness aspect regarding UFOs and ufology and the phenomenon.
I think that I don't want to catch a lot of flack for this. This is just, if I had to boil it all the way down and say, well, someone's like, make a statement. What do you think? Yeah. I'm of the opinion that it's as likely, and maybe it'll sound weird to say likely if people haven't even considered this before, but I think that it's likely that there are processes in our natural world that allow for beings, creatures, whatever you want to call it, intelligences, to transit between whatever we're separated by. And sometimes I feel like our thoughts are much stronger than we give them credit for, and that we don't know where the thoughts themselves are even coming from, or how they get into our body, our brain, and how we kind of get those thoughts out with our hands into the real world. So I think that there might be an element to this that I won't say they're some of these craft or beings or whatever are necessarily projections from our own mind, but that they are from a place that is not necessarily physical or as physical as we are right here, but they're as real. And some of them might be using our consciousness as vehicles in which to get into this world. And so we have a lot of examples, I think, that kind of can back some of this stuff up. And we don't have a lot of hardcore proof of nuts and bolts things. But I think, in my opinion, one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that you can look at, or areas of evidence, is in the experiences themselves. And, in that sense, the reality is undeniable when you talk to people who've experienced this stuff before. And so I say, for me, the most real aspects of this are in our minds. And the most unreal and intangible pieces of this are in the physical world. We got chunks of metal, we got videos on pixels, you know what I mean? But really the strongest effect are in these, a biosensor of a human being to say, okay, this is how I'm changed by this, right? People's lives are changed by this. Their homes aren't changed. They don't get bigger rims on their car. Their souls are changed. Their being is changed. And in that sense, I say, like, that's the avenue to look. That's the place to investigate. And that's the start. That's the home base. It's the starting point. Everything else should branch off from there. And and that's my opinion. I don't think that if you're studying abductions or you're looking at nuts and bolts, or if you're looking for landing sites, you're wasting time. No. But I do think some of these things might be side effects of, like, proof of how strong our minds and how strong the pool of consciousness that we're all tapping into, that might be stronger than we think. And that kind of ties into Diana Pasoko's, like, the quote, sincerity is the path to material progress. That, like, you have to want it and feel it. It has to be real in your mind before you can make it real out in the world. And so what does that say? And in my opinion, that says, like, it's your mind that makes things real. And so why are these quasi-real objects out there? Why are they showing up to people with these heightened senses of intuition and strong, basal ganglia caudate in the pituitary, whatever that is, right? It controls REM sleep. It controls a lot of stuff. It's there. It might be the physical connection to a higher self. It might be the channel in which we're talking to our higher selves from. And so it's guiding us through all these, wild scenarios. But why? And how can it do it? And so those are the questions I think are the most important in this field. And I think that those are the things we need to be diving into, which is why I think, like, human initiated contact is so interesting to me. I think, like, intuition and studies of dreams are so interesting to me, because we're going to get our answers from there. That's just how I feel.
Yeah. And do you think that UFO intelligence, if I can use that term, represents another form of intelligence?
What do you mean, UFO intelligence?
That intelligence is behind the UFO phenomenon.
Oh.
So, I'm saying, like, okay, even if we're talking about a situation where at the end of the day, all of consciousness is a singularity,
sure.
And then everything is a step down manifestation into separate parts. All right.
Sure.
So let's say we have that on the table.
Sure.
Do you think that the UFO, some UFO intelligence is another intelligence that's possibly physical, possibly not physical in the way that we think of it, but a separate intelligence in a sense?
Yeah, I do. I think that there's equally likely that there's foreign agents here working for their own means to do their own thing, but still, maybe sometimes ignorant of human beings, but maybe sometimes in tandem with them. You know what I mean? Like, for this or that reason. The variety might be mind blowing to us. The lack of one answer might be a problem for some people, but I do think that there's, however complicated and diverse our own biosphere here is, it's life. If things can eat it, it will eat it. If something's out there that can survive and live there, it will live there. This is like the natural flow of life, like the path of least resistance. It will happen. So in my opinion, like if there's another biosphere out there, if there's another, realm, right? Even if it's outside of even if it's on a planet, or let's say it's not physical, so it's independent of our physical time space, to some degree, right? It might not have to reproduce the same way or consume matter the same way to eat, but it needs energy. That's a fact, right?
Yeah.
And then so like, there are, and that must create a complicated biome, right, for its own thing, where it has its own purposes and everything else too. So I do think that some things are extensions of our own personal self. Some of the phenomena we're seeing are revealing the network we're in here. But I also think that there's a good chance that some of what we're seeing are foreign agents or foreign actors coming in for whatever reason. We would have similar reasons too. If we had access to other worlds or access to other planets, we would go there.
Yeah.
We would exploit those. We would figure it out. If we found a resource there we wanted, or, whatever, a cool, cute animal we could turn as a pet, we would do it. And so in that sense, like, why put it against or above anybody else to like kind of find those same resources here?
Yeah. And if you had to pick like one of like the coolest theories for what represents UFO intelligence, whether it be, the ETH extraterrestrial hypothesis or hyperdimensionals or what have you, do you have a favorite?
Yeah. I think that one of my favorite is that they're angels or demons, that they are representing this archetypal figure, this natural part of our experience as human beings or souls on Earth, and that these things are part of this order that, like white blood cells or something, something, and they have their own role, their own job to do, and they do that. And that's interesting to me because it's so human centric. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're not here for the water. They're not here because they want a new planet to live on. They're literally here to control your life, and they want to guide. You know what I mean? And they want to guide you or prevent you or control you in some way based on another system that's higher even than them. That's fascinating to me. You know what I mean? That's something I always keep my ear open for, because as a lifelong ufologist, that did not enter my brain not once. I was an atheist. I was a proud atheist. Like, I didn't explore this. I would never have on my free time. And so I love new ideas, and I love being able to hold conflicting ideas at the same time. I liken it to like stereoscopic vision. You know what I mean? You need to have two different POVs in order to kind of see this thing in 3D. And I think like that's the funnest one I've come across. It's like, holy crap. Is that what they were talking about back in the day? Is that an angel?
Yeah.
Horrifying.
I mean, it's definitely a very loaded one in the sense where it holds so much weight for people, especially like the Collins elite, right? The people that are, were allegedly suppressing this kind of information and disclosure because they believe it's a demonic force, which in some sense they might not be entirely wrong. And the sense where it's like that might be one way you can describe it, right?
Sure. There is that. That was funny to find out that there's a factions within the groups, right? That are like so hyper Christian or so like traditional, or they just feel what they feel, and they say this is demonic. We can't do this. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it, and because it's tackling a technological, socio like impactful thing in this like traditional lens, and as a society we've gone away from that lens, and so like that lens is as limited and as weird and as cruel as it was and is and continues to be in a lot of senses. It got us here. People thinking spiritually is kind of important, and throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You might not like religious practices, but look at the data that they have. There's a lot, and it says a lot. So like, if there are people who have access to that data and they are coming out and saying, nope, or yep, like I say, listen to them, figure out what they're talking about and why they come from that perspective, because it's as likely that these are demons or whatever, right, as they are angels, and everybody has their own, camp or whatever. So
Yeah. I mean that word, because the word is just is a matter of interpretation, you know.
Yes, yes,
So one
yeah,
person's demon is another's extraterrestrial or alien, and so on and so on.
yeah.
It's
And
just somebody else's
really,
spirit guide.
yes. And something I'm starting to kind of see now too is that these things are gifting us information. They're gifting us data, and they're gifting us technology and through ideas. If Valley is right and what they're showing us, right, is just inspiration to get like to that point, then they're leading us down some pathway. And like, but fine, they can. It's still up to a human being to make the choice to build it, to make the choice to go that way, to make the choice to like construct it, or to feed that thing. And then once they get that tool, that weapon, they can figure out what to do with it. And it's still always going to be up to a person. And like I think that's one of the dangers of coming at this thing from like angels, demons, is because it could rob us of our own blame and our own like role here. Because and that's where I think the Collins elite is, or anyone suggesting caution, I think is smart. Because if you're aware of the risks of what could be happening, you're kind of better off.
Yeah. Just to switch gears a little to the your documentary, it ended on a note, and it was talking about miracles. And so is that the part two is going to be called Miracles?
Yeah, yeah, it's almost done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
When
So
did,
I have the first 10 minutes is uploaded on my Patreon. And so like I just wanted to see if it was gonna vibe right. And so right now it's gonna, and it did. A lot of people loved it. It's helped out a lot, just in terms of encouragement to like let me know I'm on the right track. And so what it covers is just, you know, events that are unexplainable. And Dorothy Izat's in there. All right, like I included the episode of Sightings, the segment from my classmate, and she has this entire story in her life, ended tragically, like in high school. Like it was just it's a very interesting thing to tie together. But yeah, the miracle, right, would be like unexplainable events that imply to me that there's a fabric or a structure here that we don't know about, that we've mislabeled a lot of stuff. And the idea is like reframing both, you know, kind of scary phenomena and like interesting phenomena as a miracle. And then trying to reframe like the word miracle outside of like, oh, God has kind of done something great. And then just kind of reframing it as like, something weird has happened here. Something unexplainable has happened here. And I think I'm reframing the miracle as a sign of a narrative structure of life, of the universe. That there's a story we're laid out to play. And that if we ever veer off too far, then these miracles happen. And unexplainable barriers start to pop up, or unexplainable slides start to pop up, and you just go, oh, I'm going faster now in this direction. You know what I mean? Like, and so in that sense, like that's how I'm trying to reframe the word, and how I'm using it in the title. But it's almost done. I'm doing my best to like to grind at it, but I got a lot of sticks in the fire at the same time. So yeah, I think maybe by mid August there might be a release for that thing.
is it also going to be around a half hour long when complete?
It could be longer. It could be 45. It could be 45 minutes.
Cool. Yeah, the longer the better, I think. In
right?
this case, because I love your videos.
Thank you. So yeah, there's going to be a part 3 as well. And so like my goal for part 3 has always been to get my camera out and to go out and then to talk to people, to talk to the people that I'm talking to, or that whose clips I'm editing. Like I'm trying to schedule out, you know what I mean, a trip basically to figure out who I can talk to across the country, and maybe moments and times where everyone will be together in one space, whether it be a symposium or whatever, a convention. But my goal is to get out there, interview everyone. You know, I mean, I don't want to name any names, so I don't want to jinx myself. But everybody that's in my film so far, those are the people I want to talk to, including like, you know, even the podcasters and stuff, and people who've had these experiences, and get them on camera and really like dive in. because I think like as fun as it is to edit clips together, it'd be really cool to put a cherry on top with like, wow, this really set the stage and control everything, every aspect of that part 3. So it was a full cinematic experience.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I wish there was something like that. But again, to switch gears now, we've been talking a lot about the phenomenon. Did you make that graphic, the Hitchhiker graphic?
Yeah.
You drew that?
Yeah.
Or you put that thing is really cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So can you explain that for people a little?
Yeah. So this is the one that kind of has like the 3 stages of like the hitchhiker effect and how I think it could happen. Okay. So it dawned on me that if you're sympathetic resonance, 2 tuning forks tuned to the same, you hit one, the other one's going to vibrate. If they're tuned differently, they won't do that, period. You can't get it to resonate sympathetically. I'm a musician. Made sense to me. I get it. Listening and listening and listening, finding clips for videos, understanding like, wow, the hitchhiker effect seems to be, is it a virus? You know what I mean? How is it attaching to people? What's going on there? Thinking back on my own experience, how I thought like it just made sense. Like I said, I saw a woman standing in my room staring at me when I was a kid. I knew that person wasn't real. I knew that it wasn't a real person. I knew that I wasn't seeing something that I could explain. It was so unexplainable that even at 6, I couldn't talk about it. I wasn't like, oh, mom, I saw that. I knew better than to say it because I knew that I saw something really. It wasn't some tall tale. At the same time, my classmates seeing something very similar. I moved out of the house. I found out that my mom was seeing more stuff in the house. She wouldn't tell me while we were living there. Then I watched like another documentary. There's ways that information affects us that I don't think we really get. And so looking at how certain people have these experiences and then it changes their vision, it changes their perception over time, and how like people could come to Skinwalker and just kind of be in proximity of some of these people and some of these things. The concept of sympathetic resonance was the only thing that was starting to reoccur in my imagination. That there was like this thing, tune it, you flick it, and now this thing is vibrating. And I'm like, well, why is it? Why some people? Why not some other people? And this idea that like what Gary's talking about, there's this part of the brain, we don't know if it's consciously affected, which Bentov and Nolan both said, there are yogis and stuff that can consciously affect their senses, so that way they can see more and become aware of more stuff. So there's clearly an element there. You can willfully do it, but like Bentov said, it probably happens spontaneously all the time. And so looking at those things and seeing how like maybe my proximity with certain people, and after seeing certain things, maybe I have some people have a biological proclivity, right? Or hyperactive thing that like now you've been visited by something and it purposefully, willfully, biologically gets your basal ganglia or whatever, it gets it going. And now that's what triggers what Nolan talked about, this hyperactivity, like this thing. It wasn't dead space. When they scanned their brain, they didn't know what it was. And then now they know it's hyperactivity. There's a lot of activity going on there. And so it's just like, wow, what if this thing was resonating because it came in close contact with something unknowable or whatever, a hyperdimensional being. That itself, the hyperdimensional being, in order to be perceived, is also vibrating at a certain frequency or whatever. So then you have this thing becomes present to you, it makes itself aware to you, and it's purposefully or maybe remotely stimulating that part. And based on the fact that that part of the brain is also psychic or dealing with consciousness or non-physicality, now if you're in close proximity with other people, if they also have that same biological, proclivity to this effect, then it could be possible to get their brain stimulated as well, just by being around them. And so now if your brain's kind of doing that, I thought that would explain both how you can start to see things, hear things that people aren't hearing, people aren't seeing, and just becoming aware of stuff. And that fear and that like fight or flight that kind of will pick up around that time might amplify it even more. And then it just becomes its own cycle where once you see it, it kicks on your brain, it's going. And then if you're around other people who also have it, because it's non-local and non-physical, you don't have to like literally shake them to vibrate them at that frequency. But whatever psychic or conscious energy is coming off of our mind might be able to stimulate other people's too. So that's kind of where I got the idea from. And then as I was making it, I just listened to more experiences and talked to more people, and it sounded more and more right.
Yeah.
At least as a visual aid.
I think it's a really cool way to express those ideas. I mean, and again, like everything you just said in a few minutes, you kind of look at the image and you're like, oh, I get it. You know what I mean? Like within a few seconds.
Yes. That was the hope. I don't have to explain it a lot.
No, but it's really cool. So I'm glad that you're putting these tools together for researchers, because even again, somebody who might be researching this 20 years could hear the information, but when they see it, they're like, you know what I mean? It finally clicks. So that stuff is really helpful.
I hope that it's helping people. Like it helps me, but it's cool. Like it's just interesting to have a platform with so many different. I can inject so many different types of information into it. You know what I mean? And I have all these ideas. It's just really cool that it's being well received, and that it actually has like it's doing its job of summing up complicated things in short form. That's my goal.
Yeah. I did want to shortly discuss, this big loaded term called disclosure, right? It's something that comes up a lot, the idea of disclosure and kind of everything we're seeing unfold now. When you hear the term disclosure and considering the forward movement there's been in the field of, UFOs and UAP confirmation, what are your thoughts on disclosure overall? And do you think what we're seeing is like a gradual disclosure?
Yeah, I think that the American culture is so big and vast. The population is so complex. We all fall on a scale of 1,000 different things. And when you look at something like ufology or UFOs or our place in the universe or whatever, there's no one way to do it. There's no one way to do it without causing a lot of shock with people and a lot of scare. I mean, I'm not talking about, aliens are real and everyone's going to freak out and go buy guns. It's not even like that. You know what I mean? If what they reveal is like, hey, your soul's real, we have proof, that'll mess people up. It's going to cause a lot of stuff. And if I were the government, if I were the powers that be, I would create 1,000 different options for 1,000 different types, and I'd create a scale for which they can kind of follow along. And I feel like the knowledge of the unseen, the knowledge of all this stuff, this gnosis, this mystery school type information has been kept from most people because it's not something that keeps them alive. And so what the idea looks like is like, this is going to become part of our life soon. And it will become part of our survival, part of our the way we consume energy, the way we want to pass that down, our DNA, our information. Like it's going to be integrated with us in such a way that becomes digestible for everybody. But how do you do it? And so I think disclosure is not for the diehard, lifelong ufologist per se. Disclosure is for the people who are at the water cooler, who never thought about this ever in their life, and now they need to be told that it's real. And so, like, I think everybody has their own definition of it, and we all expect like to see bodies and to see like, you know what I mean?
The bodies. Yeah,
they want to, right? Because I think this is like a lifelong hobby for people too. It's not necessarily a field of investigation and education for everyone. People are like Bigfoot hunters and shit. Like they want that craft. They want this thing, and they've been talking it up for so long. And it's like, it's a personal relationship. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a per se. I'm not a religious person. But some of these allegories and stuff, they really ring true here. Which is like, when people thought that like the second their Messiah was coming, they expect that person to like behead their enemies with a flaming sword. And that's how they're going to be like, that's my new guy. That's the guy. He did what I thought he was going to do. So that's the truth. And then what you get is someone who's not like that. What you get is something that's like, it counters all your expectations. And then if you reject that thing because it's not what you thought, you can pass up a good thing. And so like, I always wonder, like, are we setting up ourselves here with this huge expectation of like what we want it to be? And then when truth comes out that it's more subtle, but more profound, but not as nuts and bolts, but not a whatever. When that truth comes out, are people just going to ignore it? Like, no, that's not what that was. And I think so. And so I think with disclosure, we're best to just say, like, to acknowledge that if you're in this field, if you're on UFO Twitter, if you're like in it at all, you're probably way ahead, years ahead of other people. But why would Congress, right, who's designed to take care of everyone, why would they come in here and talk to you as a ufologist and be like, you were going to dissect all these things and we're going to talk about these craft? It's like, no, they're going to, in the public arena, it's going to be tackled on a much slower time scale because they're dealing with people who never thought about it before. So I think it's time for the people who want disclosure to work for it. The people in the field who want, to know more, to talk about it more. That's why I do all the things I do. That's why I draw those charts. That's why I make those videos. That's why I'm engaged in conversation, because disclosure is in our hands. It's not in anybody else's hands. Lou Elizondo's doing his best to get everybody on board. Like there's clearly efforts made by people to get us all here. But at the same time, like if you're at the front of the class, right? We're there. We're in the front of the class. We're in the honors program, right? We don't need to go get everybody on our page. We should be coming up with our own field trips. We should be, investigating our own stuff, coming up with our own content, starting our own newspaper. Like, if we're so far ahead of it, we should be talking amongst ourselves. We shouldn't necessarily be waiting for the drip feed, so that everyone knows what They're not going to know. They're not going to be familiar with all the documents. And half of those documents aren't going to be included in the conversation. They're just not. And so to think that you need all these things validated, silly, man, good luck. But I do think that there's a need and a desire for quote unquote disclosure. But for the people in the front of the class, I think we could be doing our own thing more often.
Yeah, sure. And just kind of off the rails question. What are your thoughts on crash retrievals?
Oh, dig them up. Dig them up. If they're there, dude, the things are crashing. Fine.
Yeah.
I don't know about. I hate to quote Bob Lazar, right? But because I don't know what his story is all about. But I do think one of the most interesting aspects of it is that he cited one of these craft that he saw that clearly came from an archaeological dig. That's where I think we need to be looking. We need to be digging. I think we're going to find some interesting stuff if we start to really uncover the history of human beings, where we came from, why we're here, what we've been doing, and how deep our history goes. And so to think that like you could dig one up is really cool. To think that you could shoot one down, pretty wild, but I'm into it. And so if anything crashes, we should retrieve it. And if there's any historical docs or historical record of anything kind of like being buried or uncovered, we should be in that too.
Yeah, for sure. And interesting. And again, I'm not quoting Gary Nolan on this. He just put it out as a hypothetical, and he doesn't like when people mince his words. But he said, what if it's just a throwaway and they don't even need it? And once it's done, it's basically waste. So he was just trying to say,
I love it.
Yeah, he was just trying to say, hey, listen, there's more perspectives out there than that are usually talked about. I think that's what he was trying to get across.
Yeah, but I really like that line of thinking. I mean, he kind of dove into it too in his tweets, and it's really interesting how it's true. If you needed to traverse this long space, and you just needed some, recon done, like I wonder if you could create like a body, a robot body, right, where you could remotely control it.
Yeah,
where you don't have to like be there, and it's an AI. But it doesn't have to be a technology information back, through satellites or whatever, all the way back to its home planet or home world or whatever, if you could remote access it through remote viewing and kind of like gain control of this thing, there's probably no time loss, right? That's what we're told. And there's no distance that can't be traveled through this remote viewing technique. So it's like, do telefactor something in there. And then like this idea, like that they're drones kind of is cool.
Yeah.
That they're unmanned is really cool. And then I'm fascinated with the telefactoring idea that they could somehow be equipped with sensors to seek out and find people who've gained a certain level of neural strength or bandwidth that could like then be accessed. So this device could just be looking for a universal beacon based on a sensitivity to a certain signal. And once that signal is achieved, then it could telefactor in using consciousness a vague and universal message, right? That could be then perceived by the person with that bandwidth, with the highway to them now, in a way that they would somehow digest. And maybe not always perfectly, and maybe not always the same, but if it was a vague enough message, right? Then you could really tap into that. Like you could tap into like, oh, their skill set of painting or their skill set of this or that. I think it'd be super chill. Like,
Yeah.
it's a really cool line of thinking, because then you could start to do stuff like, well, what signal stimulates the basal ganglia? Like, what does it? And then you can now send out sensors for that signal and see like, hey, there's this spot in the sky above Skinwalker Ranch that's kind of pumping this signal out, and it's stimulating people's brain. You know what I mean? Like there's, oh, okay, now we can find out what they're doing. How are these UFOs remote accessing people? That kind of idea, that kind of thought frame, I think would get us into a cool realm of research if we wanted to go that route.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating. Just for people listening, what you said, you mentioned you're doing the Miracles documentary, and then actually something after that. Are there any other projects you're working on? You're even able to work on?
Yeah, so I'm also editing a film right now. It's a UFO documentary for the UFO Garage. These guys are great, and the film is coming out like great. These guys did a lot of work, and I'm just really pleased to be part of it. So that's kind of like a longer term one. The one I want to focus on right now the most is this timeline project that I did. And so like, to me, like it just got the most amount of traction. People really responded to it very, very like, instantly. And so, I kind of want to go down that like line and really dive into it, because I would hate to have it be this halfway finished project, since it spoke to so many people. And so like the charts I do are cool, the graphs are cool, the videos are cool. But this is something that I think could be etched in time and be a very good visual learning tool and for the future for us right now. So I really want to get that off the ground. So it's really a matter of kind of wrapping that up, finishing the timeline, creating an open source thing to keep punching in data over time, but to kind of get a site up and let people kind of like explore it and navigate it as I do it, right? And so that's my goal. That's the biggest one I think I'm going to start to work on now, and hopefully I can get that kind of finished over the course of time. But so there's that timeline project, and then obviously short form videos. I do want to keep doing charts in like cool like ways for people to dissect information, and I'm also just doing my best to network with I think some of the strongest proponents of the in the field right now. And so I'm kind of trying to gain access and book interviews and get more discussions going, about it. So I think that's what kind of what you could sum up a lot of the projects as, is they're just conversation starters and things to kind of keep it moving. And so be on the lookout for the timeline project. I'll be pumping that out like crazy, and then just the videos and stuff as they come out.
Yeah, sure. And where can people find all your work?
Videos, YouTube and TikTok. Check it out. Some stuff lands on TikTok that doesn't land on YouTube. And then also UFO Twitter. Find me on Twitter, Tupacabra, because that's a really cool home base for the community. And that's what I'm using now to kind of get a lot of work out.
Yeah. And for people listening, I'm going to have links in the show notes, and I'm going to have links in the YouTube. And just for the audience, Tupacabra, Sam, some parting words for anybody on this path.
Oh, stay on it. Stay on it. Don't let other people dictate to you how you should or shouldn't look into it. This is a personal relationship you're going to have with the phenomena. The more you let people dictate how you should see it, how you should feel it, how you should perceive it, the more you're going to be relying on them to digest information for you that in the end will be proven to be very personal and very, very catered to you as in your experience as a person. So like, come up with a personal relationship with it, investigate it for your own reasons, and be able to take criticism and also discouragement when you find out a theory is wrong, or a person you thought was your hero isn't. I don't know, just live it up. It's not a personal thing to attack anybody on, but just dive in with your full heart and like, let's see what happens. A lot of cool stuff can really happen.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I appreciate so much you coming on. I think you're a very gifted creator in the space. And again, I love all your stuff, and I'm looking forward to everything that you talked about that's going to be coming out. So thank you so much for coming on.
Dude,
and I hope,
James.
yeah, for sure, man. I hope to speak to you again soon, man.
Likewise, man. Likewise. I'll be around.
All right, take care, buddy.
You too. You too.